Welcome back to video number 4 in this 4-part video series dealing with toxic employees. Now, I really hope that you've enjoyed the first few videos in this series. And what I thought I'd do, I'd start this video off with a bit of a recap of what we've learned so far. So if you cast your mind back to video number 1, we looked at how to identify a toxic employee. And we looked at the differences between disengaged employees and toxic employees. And what we learned was that they're actually two very, very different people. Toxic employees in particular are the people that make the other employees in your organisation disengaged. And in that sense, they're actually worse than disengaged employees. So we must do something about them. What they do is they leave that trail of destruction behind them. That was video number 1. In video number 2, we looked at prevention. What can we do to prevent toxic employees coming into our workplace or surviving in our workplace? And we took one concept, and that was the concept of creating the right culture. And we said, well, how do we do that? And we looked at policies and procedures. What can we do with our policies and procedures to make sure that we create the right culture in our organisation to make sure that these toxic employees cannot survive and do not thrive? And then in video number 3, we looked at the complaints process. We looked at why it's so important that if we get a complaint, we do something about it immediately. And the most important thing probably in that video, which I want you to really grasp hold of, is that you must deal with each complaint you receive on a case-by-case basis. You've got to assess what type of behaviour it is. Are we dealing with a serial bully or an unwitting bully? And then you must adapt your complaints process or your investigation process depending upon what type of bully you are dealing with. Now, it won't come as a surprise to you to learn that what we've done in these 3 videos so far is we've really just skimmed the surface. If you imagine a hovercraft speeding across the water at breakneck speed, that's exactly what we've done in this video series. But it's been an important video series because what I've hoped that we have done is we've just started to get you thinking about this topic, and particularly about how important this topic is. And it's so important, in my view, that if you're in any kind of position in your organisation, whether you're the business owner or whether you are in the HR department, that you have as much information as possible at your disposal to enable you to do something about this problem. And it is a problem. I think I referred in a previous video to the Massey Department of Labour study, which said that 18% of the New Zealand workplace felt that they had been bullied at work. So it is a problem, and we must do something about it. And because of that, we are actually running a series of workshops around the country all about dealing with toxic employees in the workplace. And the next one we've got coming up is on the 28th of October this year, and that's going to be in Wellington. So if you live in the Wellington region, or if you want to come down to Wellington or for the occasion for that workshop, then we would really encourage you to do so. And what I want to do in this video is I want to give you just a taster of what that workshop is going to cover. Essentially, we're splitting the workshop into 3 parts because you've got 3 speakers. I'm just one of the speakers. We've got Janice Davies, who is an attitude specialist. She has been the victim of bullying in the workplace, so she has first-hand experience of what this can be like. Then you've got me, an employment law barrister, author of Employed But Not Engaged. Studied this subject. I've read that Massey Department of Labour report, and I'm very passionate about making sure that we don't end up with bullies and toxic employees in the workplace. I have dealt with cases which have involved bullying. I've represented employees. I've also represented employers who have been on the receiving end of a complaint regarding bullying in the workplace. So I've seen it from both sides of the fence. And then thirdly, we've got Anne Andrews, who is an author of several books and is an expert in creating winning teams. She runs an organisation called Teams From Woe to Go, and she is a certified speaking professional. So what are we going to cover in this workshop? So as I say, we're going to split it into 3 parts. The first part is all about identification. Now, we spent about 5 or 10 minutes maybe in the first video looking at this topic. This is what we're going to cover in the workshop. Which personality types can become toxic? which personality types can become victims. You see, it's important that you recognise who are the types of people who are likely to fall into each category. What are the different types of bully and bullying behaviour? See, it's your job. You've got to try and identify these people in the organisation, and you've got to be able to deal with complaints appropriately. So it's important that you understand their way of operating. What are the telltale signs of bullying and toxicity in your organisation? What should you be looking out for as a business owner or as an HR officer? How about the victim? How do they react to bullying? What can we do for the victim to help them through this kind of situation? What's the motive behind the bully? If you're going to sit down with this bully and have to deal with it, you're going to need to understand what their motivation is in order that you can deal with that person appropriately. And what about the victim as well? How are we going to deal with their self-esteem issues, which are obviously going to be hugely damaged by what they've been through? Then on the prevention side, what we're going to look at is what's the difference between bullying, harassment and other types of toxicity? What are the legal definitions? How does the law view them differently? What's your legal exposure for not dealing with toxic employees? We touched on it earlier in this video series, but we're going to go into that in a little bit more detail. How does the law expect you to deal with toxic employees? How do we create that organisational culture which prevents bullying? We talked very, very briefly about policies and procedures. But why not? We're going to actually sit down and we're going to look at that dignity at work policy, and we're going to look at what are the various components of that dignity at work policy so we can actually compile one for your organisation. How do we monitor and deal with behavioural competencies? So we haven't touched on behavioural competencies at all during this video series, but how people behave in the workplace is actually very, very important. We spend a lot of time focusing on how people reach KPIs and perform in terms of the technical side of their work, but how do we performance manage them in relation to their behaviour? We're going to look at that in a lot more detail in the workshop. And how do we deal finally with a complaint about a toxic employee? What is the process we need to go through? And the whole response piece is very, very important, and that's something which Anne Andrews is exceedingly good at. She has sat in these kind of meetings with a bully and had to deal with that bully across the table. So we're actually going to have a section of the workshop which deals with role plays. You're probably thinking, oh God, not role plays. Why do we have to do role plays? I hate role plays. It's amazing how everybody says that. But when they do them, they come away and say, do you know what? That was the best part of the workshop. I'm so glad that you made us do that, because what role plays do is it gives you the tools and the ammunition to be able to practice your skills so that when you end up in that situation for real, you know exactly what to do. Remember I told you that the serial bully was really manipulative? Well, how do you deal with that manipulation? How do you make sure that you are not being manipulated? Well, the only way to do that is to practice dealing with someone like that. And we're going to do exactly that in the workshop. And of course, what the role plays do is they help you put everything that you've learnt in the theory part into practice. And it kind of teaches you what you have to say when you're in that face-to-face meeting with that person. So that's the workshop. What are you going to take away with you? Because we're actually going to give you materials that you can take away and you can implement in your organisation. We're going to give you a template, dignity at work policy. So whilst we're going to look at how you formulate it for your own business, we're actually going to give you a template so you can take it away and implement it into your business. We're going to give you some ideas and some a checklist of things that you might want to think about putting in your job descriptions in order that you can monitor a person's behaviour. Remember, we're not talking about performance on the job, we're talking about a person's behaviour towards other people in the workplace. What are those behavioural competencies? Have you ever had a job description or a template job description given to you, and there's that heading, behavioural competencies, and you've thought, well, what the hell do I put in there? We're going to tell you what to put in there. We're going to give you some ideas that you can actually take away with you from that workshop. And finally, we're going to give you a step-by-step process for dealing with bullying in the workplace. Whether that bully is an unwitting bully, or whether that person is a serial bully. Remember I said to you that you must deal with serial bullies in a very, very different way to the way you deal with unwitting bullies? Well, we're going to explain that in a little bit more detail and give you that step-by-step process. So, if you've been through this video series, I know that you're going to want to come to the workshop. So, particularly if you're in the Wellington region. So, let me give you a little bit more information about the workshop. The investment for you is $299 plus GST, providing that you book and pay before the early bird, which expires on the 20th of October. Remember, the workshop is on the 28th. So you've got to book and pay before the 20th of October to take advantage of that early bird rate. If you book after that, the price does go up to $399 plus GST. Now, if you're in a large organisation, you may be thinking, well, I'd like to come along, but I'd also like to bring along my colleague as well. That's not a problem at all. We do provide discounts for bulk purchases. So if 2 of you want to come along, or 3 or 4, then the price gets lower the more people that you bring along. How do you pay? You can pay either online by credit card, by going to the approachablepawyer.com website, and if you look below, you'll find the link to the page where you can pay online. Alternatively, we find a lot of organisations prefer to be invoiced. That's not a problem at all. All you have to do is just drop me an email with the details of how many people you want to book on the course. We will give you an invoice, and then you can pay on the invoice as well. And if there's any questions that you have about the workshop which we haven't answered in this video series that you may think of, then please do feel free to email me, michael@approachablepawyer.com, and I will try and answer those queries for you, because we really want to see you at this workshop in Wellington so we can really get into this topic, because we're on a mission, and our mission is to try and reduce that statistic. Remember that statistic? 18% of people in the New Zealand workplace believe they had been bullied. We want to reduce that statistic, and we need your help to do it. So the first thing you can do is book yourself a place on this workshop. And I really look forward to seeing you there. So the link is below me, so make sure you click on that link now and book your place before all the seats fill up. I should add there that we're in a training venue. There is a limit on the number of seats, so don't leave it too late. Get in before the early bird on the 20th of October and make sure that you reserve your seat. Any questions? Michael@approachablepawyer.com. So it's been great having you for this 4-part video series. I really hoped you enjoy it. If you can't make it along to the workshop, we will be running others in other parts of the country. So please do let us know if you want one in your area, and we'll be pleased to run it for you. My name is Michael Smythe, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.